Racism exists because we perpetuate the notions that races exist, and we use them to explain away differences in our political economy. That people, kind of a Marxist perspective, I guess, but if everybody's basic needs were being met, we wouldn't need to explain away differences, and we wouldn't resort to the racial categories we've been taught that are in some ways that were taught are explanatory for some of those differences. We live in a society where some people have more power and some people have less. People have access to it, people don't, to resources, to food, to housing, to money, and it's greatly stratified. And I think we have been taught to tie racial explanations to some of them. It causes some people to exert power over others and to assume certain things about their position in it, and other people to, assume things about theirs and not be okay with it, and challenge some of them through expressions of racism, when in fact it would probably be a lot more useful to challenge the political economy itself than challenging people based on the notions of racism. I'm kind of with Kelly. I think it comes down to differential access to resources and things at the heart of it, even though that's not how we talk about it, and that's not how it manifests itself. Right? That's how it started. That was the heart of it. I mean, the concept of race in the United States didn't exist, 300 years ago. It developed in the last, 150 years. So it developed in the context of all that other political economy developing too, I think.
I was thinking too about what Renee was saying about racism and how that it may happen when a group comes in and attempts to change the way of life. As the other group, he gave the example of Portland, and I was thinking that you could talk about that in terms of Hawaii too, and how racism may manifest itself here in Hawaii, like maybe differently than other places with a different history, places with a different racial ethnic composition. But that idea or that framework of sort of the local, non-local distinction, and how that maybe racism takes on that framework here in Hawaii, maybe a little bit different than other places. It just made me think of that when you talked about Portland. I don't know, what do you folks think? Is there any truth to that racism and the local and non-local distinction?
Oh, yeah. Well, what was that? So that being different from how it manifests in like Portland.
Yeah, because of the history of Hawaii, where essentially we had the Hawaiian people were colonized by another group who came in and took property, took land, took over the government, attempted to destroy a culture, and how that history, I think, still manifests itself now in contemporary society. So that racism may be more in terms of viewing outsiders as a threat to the way of life here in Hawaii. And I realize there's a lot of factions in the sovereignty movement here, but some folks involved in the movement talk about the importance of stopping tourism and people.
Settlers.
Yeah. And maybe that's sort of using those same assumptions about who is a threat and why they're a threat.
This is very, if you look at it, you compare the U.S. mainland to the resources in Hawaii, we're so much more limited. Where the boundaries and everything is much more clear. So, I do see it coming up in that way, especially when things are threatening what people consider the Hawaiian way of life. Like right now, what's on the news is the people in like Kahana, down there, and the state saying, no, you're on park land, so you have to leave, and the families have been there for generations. So, and then when you look at the news, you see the Clayton He, who's part Hawaiian, sitting in front and speaking as the senator for the area with the Hawaiian families behind him. And then you see the DLNR department head director, a white woman, speaking outside, with the camera people around here. So it's the difference is still, you see it visually.
Although Kolima is back in the Kahana families also, and it's a little bit. I think so, right? Isn't Colleen Myers back in the Kahana families also? Kind of interesting. It's not simple. I mean, in Hawaii too. I think that's one part of it.
There are kind of interesting different levels of grouping in Hawaii though. Because you have, I mean, there's all the different ethnic groups that are recognized and to some degree celebrated in some ways.
Mhm.
Frank de Lima, some people might call his jokes racism, but in some ways he's also celebrating all those differences, right? That bring people to recognize them and appreciate them and be able to reflect back and laugh at them. And all the festivals and all the food everybody likes to eat and all the kind of combining of cultures that's gone into the plate lunch and whatever, all that stuff that in one ways, expresses valuing difference. Real multiculturalism, valuing the different cultures and different ethnic groups. But on the other hand, you do have that other level where you have all these people who have such, mixed ancestry backgrounds. I mean, many people who identify even as Hawaiian had ancestry that came from other places too. So you have this kind of appreciation of that, but then you have another division made, like you said, people from here, local people. And Hawaiians are a subgroup of that, or from some part of that, but then that local and outside people come in. The outer. So it's like kind of different levels. They express themselves in different ways in different settings. So you get different kinds of racism or ethnicism, or I don't know, that's probably not a word. Should be a word.
Should be a word, yeah, probably. That's something.